husbands have 24 more months left on their sentences.
You girls are gonna be just fine. We're gonna take care of you.
I can't even make the rent with what they gave me last night.
Bunch of guys that don't even remember what family means.
So we remind them.
I'm curious just how you guys kind of feel about the genre in general, and if there were like even movies that you watched in preparation for the making of this.
I love a mafia movie. I love the strange dedication to a family that is not your family, and sometimes the blind dedication to it that's really not out of love but fear. I find it a very like confusing, and yet you also understand how this weird kind of thing builds. So not even just the story and the excitement and the thrill and the violence that goes with it. It's the dedication to something that you've maybe not necessarily chosen. I always find really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I being not a violent person and somebody who can't imagine being in the mob or being a hitman or hitwoman, like, for me, the idea of how you do that and how you get to that place that that's something that's okay and can accept, and for me, it's one of those things I can't wrap my head around, so I like playing characters and doing projects that involve things that I just can't understand.
I mean, I think I've seen my fair share of gangster movies, but no, I didn't feel the need to go and look at other ones to inform how I would act or work in this one, because it was very much its own thing. Like, it had its own flavor totally, and talking to Andrea was really the way into figuring out what the tone of the movie was.
I mean, I've always watched gangster films. I love them, which is why I think I was excited to like get to play in that sandbox in the first place. But when it came time to make this, I specifically stopped watching all of those because I didn't want to just be copying other people. I wanted to like have my own voice and my own point of view. The movie that I looked at most was Thelma and Louise, because it's two very complicated women at the center of it. They're not angels. They do some bad stuff, but we love them and we follow them, and they look great, and they're, it's very aspirational in their anti-hero way. So I really wanted that for my women. They are not angels. They do bad stuff, but they are our anti-heroes, and we want to be rooting for them. So like trying to find that tone and that balance, I looked at Thelma and Louise a lot.
Claire, put a bullet in his head.
You girls kill me.
These are criminals. However, like, obviously there is this systemic misogyny that keeps these women down. I mean, Claire is physically abused. I'm kind of curious just kind of how you negotiated that in the making of the film.
I mean, I for myself, I mean, and with all the women, you think they're making poor choices. They're making hurtful choices, violent choices. But when I really stood back and had to think about it, I was like, you can't really say what you would do. I don't know. I mean, I certainly would like to think I wouldn't go to that length, but my character couldn't get another job, couldn't support her kids, was about to be thrown out into New York City in the 70s, could not get another job, tried to do all the right things. So I'm not one that ever thinks, well, I know what I do. I was like, no one knows what they do until they're put into that circumstance. And I think Andrea wrote a script that was so good because it's believable that these are the only choices that they had left. And then you find yourself strangely rooting for these bad choices. And that's when I think you really have a great story.
Mm-hmm. And there are consequences to those choices as well. And in the film, nobody ends up, walking away with everything that they ever wanted. That there are, for my character especially, there are consequences for what happens. And I think that's was something that we all really liked. It felt very real.
How much did they evolve the characters and like change them towards their own?
I mean, that's part of the fun part of movie making, is that you get to collaborate with people who are world-class artists, and they're going to come to the table with their own contributions and thoughts. And at this point, I feel like where the character ends and where the actress begins is inseparable. Meaning, like, these characters are these actresses in my mind. All three of them just so nailed their parts that I'm really lucky that I got to work with them.
Gabriel's an interesting character in that when he's committing violence, it is stoic. It's motionless. He really doesn't feel it, but he also at the same time has this very passionate love for Claire. I imagine that is a complex character to kind of wrap your mind around, so I'm curious just about your conversations with Andrea about building that.
That's exactly right. Like, I think that it was about figuring out what one person could say all those lines and be all those things and do all those things. It was like, that's going to be quite an interesting fella. So I think it was all just letting it slowly bed in and talking to Andrea, and she thought of him as a romantic, and so I took that, and then I thought of him as kind of like, not a stoner, but like somebody who just has a slow heart rate, so I took that in, and then following Elisabeth. That was a big thing. It had to work for her. So I tried to work around, like I tried to orbit her, what she was doing.
Sure. And how much time did you get to spend time with her or with him set? Or?
We had a couple days, but like we read through all the scenes together and just slowly worked out how they would be. We just talked about being this beautiful, weird couple, like both weird enough for each other, and that was kind of how I approached it then.
I don't want you to do it. I want you to teach me how to do it.
I think violence is really upsetting, and I think guns are really not okay and are really upsetting, and I think we have a really big gun problem. So I didn't want guns to look particularly cool or violence to look particularly entertaining. I wanted it to be upsetting. So I wouldn't let any of the actresses go for firearms training because I wanted them to look awkward when they held a gun. You know, they're not supposed to be expert, gunslingers, so I wanted it to feel heavy in their hands and look awkward. And I don't know if you noticed, but I slightly cranked the volume on the bullet shots so that you sit there and you do this because I want you to feel it. I want you to react to it. I think that it's too easy to not see it anymore, to let that violence kind of pass you by and not take it in. And I want people to be like, oh my God, that was upsetting. I want that feeling. I want people to acknowledge it's there. But yeah, there is a lot of violence, but there's actually very little blood. It's not like, it is not a gore fest. I was not interested in that.
They're going to swallow this entire city. You go to war, there's no coming back.
Alfonso Coretti wants to talk.
If we go to Brooklyn, we're dead.
What do you wear to something like that? You get dressed up?
Are you kidding?
What?
56 Charlie, take one. Amar.
Take him up. Yeah, or whatever.
What did Richie say?
Just condolences.
Not exactly dressed for a funeral.
The bitch fell. I'm not sorry.